This is 10.3 lecture video C. We're still working on the Pythagorean theorem, and we're going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are the legs of the right triangle and c is the hypotenuse. So in this case, we have, let's say we have a is 4, and this is b, we don't know, and the hypotenuse is 6. So we're going to have 4 squared plus b squared equals c squared, which is 6. So that's 6 squared. 4 squared is 16 plus b squared equals 36. Now, my goal is to get b squared by itself, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. I'm left with b squared equals 20. Now, I need to get, that is totally 20, yes. I need to get rid of the square, so I'm going to square root both sides. Now I get b equals plus or minus the square root of 20. Now, in general, it would be a positive square root of 20 or a negative square root of 20. But again, because we're looking for distance, we only worry about the positive square root. So we have the square root of 20. I know that the square root of 4 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 20. The square root of 4 is 2, and 2 square roots of 5. That's what you end up with. So your b value is going to be a positive 2 square roots of 5. And there's your answer. Normally it would be a plus or a minus. However, because of distance, it is only going to be a positive 2 square roots of 5. So the next problem. We're going to use the distance formula. The distance formula is the change in x's squared plus the change in y's squared. So labeling everything is very important. Because this is my first point and this is my second point, I'm going to call this x1, y1, and I'm going to call this x2, y2. The reason why, it's just easier. The first point, the second point, not a big deal. Now, I'm just going to plug and chug. So I'm going to write out this big giant equation. I have x2 minus x1 all squared plus, parenthesis, y2 minus y1 all squared. Now I do that because, trust me, it just is helpful, especially when you have negative numbers. So my x2 is 5, my x1 is 2, my y2 is 3, and my y1 is a negative 1. That's why those little parentheses are really helpful. So you're left with d equals the square root. So I'm going to do my first parenthesis first. 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay? 3 squared is 9. So I'm just going to do that first. Now I'm going to change colors for a second. And this one, I don't like that it has a negative times a negative. Well, that is positive. A negative times a negative is positive. So this is going to be plus 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So now I have the distance equals the square root of 9 plus 16. Those are all under the radical, so just add them together. That gives you the square root of 25. Now the square root of 25 is 5. So the distance is 5. It doesn't tell me 5 meters, 5 feet, I don't know, but it's just 5. So the distance is 5. Next problem, remember, call this one x1, y1, call this one x2, y2, only because one's your first point, one's your second point. So now you're just going to plug and chug. Highly recommend you do what I did earlier. There's my x2 minus my x1 squared plus my y2 minus my y1 all squared. So it's just helpful having them. So first of all, my x2 is 0. My x1 is negative 3. My y2 is negative 4. My y2 is negative 4. My y1 is 2. So now we get d equals the square root. Now, I'm going to change colors real quickly. A negative times a negative is a positive, so I'm going to change those right now. 0 plus 3 is 3, and then you're going to square it. Over here, we have a negative 4 plus a negative 2. That gives you a negative 6 squared. So D is equal to 9 plus 36. Negative 6 squared is 36. 3 squared is 9. So D is equal to the square root of, what is that, 45? 45, right? 36 is 5, carry the 1. Yep, 45. So we have the square root of 45. I know that the perfect square root of 9 times the square root of 5 give you the square root of 45. Square root of 9 is 3, and you cannot square root 5. So D is going to equal 3 square roots of 5. Now, some people do the problem like this. They actually do a factor tree. So 9 times 5 is 45. They also know that 3 times 3 is 9. So these are my factors. 3 squared times 5. So the distance equals the square root of 3 squared times 5. Well, you're going to end up the square root of 3 squared is 3, and then the square root of 5 you cannot do. I don't care which way you do this. I prefer this method, but some people use this method. It does not matter which one you use to simplify the radicals. Next one, find an equation of a circle given its center and its radius. Given its center and radius. So here we go. A circle is a circle. It has a center and it has a radius, which is the same distance all the way around it. A diameter goes completely through it. It's 2 radiuses. And here we go. So find the equation of a circle with a radius of 4 and a center of 0, 0. So what that means is this is 0, 0, and this is 4, this is 4, this is 4, and this is 4. It's the distance. So we have this point, which is 0, 0. And then we have a point like this, which would be negative 4, 0. So you can choose any distance that you want to. It does not matter. We could use this point if we wanted to. We could use this point if we wanted to. Whatever point you want to. I personally don't like negative numbers, so I'm going to use these two numbers. I'm going to use 0, 0 and 4, 0. That's it. You can use any point you want to as long as it's the radius. Okay? I would never use one of these because I can't tell what the points are because it's not perfect. So I'm going to call this x1, y1. I'm going to call this x2, y2. And I'm just going to use this formula. So the formula is x2 minus x1, whole thing squared, plus y2 minus y1, whole thing squared. Let me change colors. All right. My x2 is 4. My x1 is 0. My y2 is 0. My y1 is 0. So you're left with 4 minus 0 is 4. 4 squared is 16. And then 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 squared is 0. So you end up with the square root of 16, which is 4. So the distance is 4, right? Find an equation of a circle with radius 4 and center 4 and graph it. So this is 4, and this is 4. And if I did this, whoosh, I know that this is 4. I'm going further on this problem, and I know this would be 4. Let's say we want to find out what this length is right here. You would go 4 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. So you'd have 16 plus 16 equals c squared. I added more to this problem. Because, yeah, that's all I wanted to know. And then 32 equals c squared. So to get rid of the c, you square root both sides. So the hypotenuse would be 32 is the square root of 16 times the square root of 2, which is 4 square roots of 2. So that's going to be 4 square roots of 2. It's actually plus or minus 4 square roots of 2, but we're talking about distance, and distance is always positive. Okay, next one. Find the equation of a circle whose center is 3, negative 2, and the radius is 4, and then graph it. It's kind of already graphed, but okay. So find an equation of a circle and graph it. It doesn't say find the area. It's just find an equation of a circle with center, that, and radius 4, and graph it. Okay, let's try it. I'm assuming they're just wanting us to figure it out, but okay, I'm going to go with it. So this would also be, there's a formula for finding, oh, there it is. I'm thinking, I know there's a formula for this. What am I missing? Finding an equation of a circle and graphing it. Find an equation of a circle with radius 4 and center 0, 0, and graph it. Here's my formula. It should have been written first. So your HK is your vertex. So that is your center, not vertex, that's your center, HK. And that's your center. So yeah, so that's what they want. They want this formula. So I'm thinking, I don't know what the formula is. So H, or X minus H squared, and it's plus, right? Where's my formula? Plus y minus k squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. Okay, so that's what they want us to do. So on this problem here, my center is 0, so it's going to be x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared, and my radius is 4, so it's going to be 4 squared. So it's going to be x squared plus y squared equals 16. And you can leave it as 4 squared if you want to, or you can just do 16. That is an equation of a circle. I made up the hypotenuse thing. I just was like giving me something to do. And now I know what the formula is because I haven't done this in a long while. So now we're good to go. So on this one here, they gave us the center and they gave us the radius. The distance is just the distance formula. So if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have x. So anyways, my HK is 3, negative 2. This is my H, this is my K, because that's my center. All right. So my H is 3, my K is negative 2. So x minus, that's part of my formula. My H is 3 squared plus y minus, because that's part of my formula, but K is a negative 2 squared, and my radius is 4. So that's just going to be 4 squared. So in here, I'm left with x minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared. You guys, a negative and a negative is a positive, equals 16. And that's your equation of a circle. Okay? It threw me when it had the formula for the distance. It already gave me what the radius was. All right. So now here's the equation of a circle with a radius r and center HK, the given formula. Find the equation of a circle with the center here and the radius is square root of 10. So what you're going to end up with is, remember, this is H, this is K. So it's going to be x minus, because that's part of your formula. H is 2, so that's squared, plus y minus, because that's part of your formula. K is -1 squared equals square root of 10 squared, because your radius is square root of 10. So you're going to end up with x minus 2 squared plus y plus 1 squared, because a negative times a negative is a positive, and the square root of 10 squared is 10. And that's it. Because the square root of 10 times the square root of 10 is the square root of 100. Square root of 100 is 10. And that's the equation of a circle. And we have a few more things. So here we go. Find the center and radius and then graph the circle. So first of all, remember my formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. So first of all, my radius squared is 4. So when I square root both sides, it's going to be r equals plus or minus 2. Now we don't care about the negative because we're talking about distance, so r is going to be 2. Now my center is going to have to be, now because that's a negative, because part of my formula, it has to be a negative. So x minus a -3 squared plus y minus, because part of my formula, a -2 squared equals 2 squared. Okay. Now if you notice, my h is going to be -3. My k is going to be -2. And the reason why is a negative times a negative is a positive, and that's where that positive is here. Negative times a negative is a positive, and that's why it's here. So I'm going to do my center first. So it's going to go over -3 down -2. So I'm here. My radius is 2, which means it goes 1, 2. Here's a point. 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 Find the center of the radius, then graph the circle. So I don't know if I can do a circle, or when I do SmartBook, it has like ways to do it. Okay, I'm gonna just try my best to draw it. I'm not a perfect drawer. I wish I had, oh, that wasn't bad. All right, so there you go. There's my circle. Let's do the next one before I run out of time. I only have one more left, so let's do this. So again, my formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So that's my formula. So what I'm going to end up being is x minus 2 squared. I should make that black, sorry. Plus y minus 1 squared equals 3 squared, because the square root of 9 is 3, so it's got to be 3 squared. So first of all, my center will be 2, 1. Because remember that negative on the outside, that's just part of my formula. And my radius is going to be 3. So I'm going to graph that over 2, up 1. So at this point, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to try drawing a circle the best I possibly can. And that's a terrible looking circle.